Hi guys! Oh, that glare is terrible. Hi guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. I don't usually post videos of me speaking. Actually, I never post videos of me speaking. But so many people have reached out to me in the last few weeks asking me how I'm doing, if I'm okay, how all of this happened, what it's like, that I thought I would share my story with you guys. There's also been a lot of stuff in the news recently about people maybe not wanting to adhere to some social distancing, maybe thinking that coronavirus isn't as bad as people are saying it is. I just wanted to give you a little bit of insight as to what it's really like from somebody who has had it. It has now been 30 days since I first started showing symptoms for COVID-19, and I am now in week 4 of my recovery. That's 4 weeks. I'll walk you guys through what happened leading up to my getting sick with COVID-19, the process of getting tested and my recovery timeline, as well as a full list of symptoms to watch out for beyond the big 3 symptoms that we've heard over and over again in the news. I also want to share how we managed to keep my family healthy and safe while they were living in the same house as me while I was recovering. There are so many little things that you guys can do to keep yourself safe if you or someone you live with thinks that they've been exposed to coronavirus. And let's face it, if you've left your house at any point over the last 4 weeks, you could possibly have been exposed. It's just a fact. My story begins in early March 2020. At that time, I was living my best life working as a main stage performer with Disney Cruise Line, portraying the role of Elsa in Frozen, a musical spectacular. Shameless plug, if you want to see some clips of me singing Let It Go, I will link them up here as well as in the description below. We had been doing different cruises around the Caribbean, and we had just repositioned to New Orleans just in time for Mardi Gras. New Orleans is a fantastic city, and we had so much fun. I think we were there 5 times. On March 6th, we left New Orleans to begin our longest cruise yet, a 2-week repositioning cruise down through the Panama Canal and up the west coast of Mexico, eventually landing us in San Diego on March 20th. Now, at that point, we all knew the coronavirus was a thing, and actually Disney Cruise Line had started screening passengers in February who had been to certain countries like China. I believe Japan was added to it, and I believe Italy was added to it as well before we left New Orleans on the 6th. And honestly, it was a pretty uneventful cruise up until about March 11th. After that, things started getting a little crazy. Obviously, the news started blowing up with corona cases in the United States. Cruise lines were starting to suspend operations. Disney actually decided to suspend operations that week, and there were extra measures taken on board to make sure that we stayed as safe and healthy as possible. Now, in and around March 14th, 15th, Justin Trudeau started making his daily news conferences, urging Canadians abroad to come home while they still could. And at that point, I started to panic. I'm not one for sensationalized news, but I often do believe what my government is telling me, and if they were telling me to take this seriously, I was going to take it seriously. I'd read about how contagious COVID-19 was, and how it was possible to spread the virus even by people who weren't showing any symptoms. And I was reading about all of the social distancing measures that were starting to be put in place around the world. And let's face it, social distancing isn't really possible on a cruise ship. We're all breathing the same air, we're all sharing the same spaces, and we can't leave. I just knew in my bones that someone on that cruise likely already had the virus. Little did I know, I was one of them. So, on March 19th, after a lot of back and forth, DCL finally allowed us to go home if that was what we wanted to do. And boy, was that what I wanted to do. So on March 20th, I grabbed the last Canadian-bound WestJet flight from San Diego to Calgary. I connected in Calgary and I landed in Toronto early on the morning of March 21st. Even though I had no idea if I had coronavirus or not at that point, I was incredibly safe on my journey home. I wore a mask on both of my flights. I wore a mask on the bus to the airport. I wore a mask in the airport. And when my husband came to Pearson, there were no hugs. I carried my own bags, and I sat in the back seat, masked with the window cracked for the hour-long drive home. I went straight upstairs, my bags were left in the car, and I settled into our bedroom for what I thought was going to be a peaceful 2 weeks, reading books, watching Tiger King, catching up with friends on FaceTime. That is not at all how I spent those 2 weeks. Day 1. On Monday, March 23rd, I slept all day. Those of you who know me know I do not sleep in, and I don't usually let myself nap either. That day, I slept in till 11 a.m., I was awake for half an hour and I slept again from 11:30 to 5 p.m. I was awake for another half hour, I slept from 5:30 to 9 p.m. and I slept again from 9:30 p.m. till 7 a.m. the next morning. At that point, I wasn't particularly worried. Honestly, I thought I was just completely exhausted from the whole experience and I was still adjusting from West Coast time, but it did feel like I had narcolepsy. I could not stay awake. My husband actually took a few photos of me because he thought it was so funny that I couldn't stay awake. And then it wasn't funny. Day 2. I woke up at 7 a.m., bounded down the stairs excited to start my day, and started to immediately feel completely dizzy. I had to hold the railing at the bottom of the stairs to catch my balance. My forehead immediately clammed up with sweat, as well as my arms and my back. I couldn't stand. I was completely disoriented, and I had to crawl back up the stairs and into my bed. At that point, I knew I had it. I took my temperature, and I had a fever of 100. Nothing horrible, but definitely a fever. I had completely lost my appetite. I realized in hindsight that the day before, I had been unable to taste or smell my food. But I was so tired, it didn't even occur to me to be concerned about that. In fact, I remember being frustrated that I couldn't taste my pizza. I spent the day unable to even sit up in bed. The most I could do was roll over on my side with my eyes closed and my headphones, talking to my mother on the phone, talking to a doctor friend of mine, talking to my husband, and eventually talking to public health in the Niagara region where I live. They were initially not too concerned with my symptoms, as my biggest symptom was still extreme fatigue and dizziness. I only had a mild fever, and I didn't have a cough or a sore throat. But the second they learned that I had just gotten off a cruise ship 3 days prior, they booked me in for a test. And this I will be eternally grateful for. Day 3. My fever had gone up and down but hadn't gone away, and I'd actually been advised to stop taking Tylenol because my fever was so mild that I should let my body try and fight whatever it was fighting. We all know it was coronavirus, but I didn't know for sure yet. I had an all-over body ache. I was in so much pain I couldn't sleep, but I was also in so much pain that I couldn't really open my eyes. And it was then that my breathing started to feel funny. I felt like I was only getting about 60% of the oxygen that I would usually get if I took a full deep breath. I continued to have no appetite, and as well, I couldn't even ingest water. That's how much pain I was in. Day 4. Day 4 felt the exact same as day 3, except that I now had to get dressed, masked up, and drive myself to the testing center 15 minutes from my house. Public health had advised me to come by myself because any sharing of small spaces with anyone who wasn't infected severely increased their chances of getting it. And honestly, throughout this entire experience, the anxiety of possibly infecting my husband and my stepdaughter, who had to take care of me through this entire thing, made everything that much worse. So I drove myself. I was faint, I was nauseous, I could barely sit up. I remember at one point slumping over the steering wheel and driving with it under my chin practically. My grandmother actually used to drive like that. I got to the testing center, I had to wait for a phone call to come in, and I had the incredibly painful nasal swab. I think I screamed. I know I screamed. And I drove myself back. I remember calling my husband on the drive back from the testing center, thinking I was gonna have to pull over and he was gonna have to come get me. That's how faint I was. I broke into an instant and complete cold sweat as I pulled into the driveway, and I crawled back up to bed. Day 5 through 10. I remember after day 5, I kept waiting to get better, and it kept not happening. I think that was one of the scariest moments actually, was after day 5, when during any normal sickness I would expect to start feeling better. I just didn't. For the next 5 days, my symptoms stayed exactly where they were. Shortness of breath, extreme fatigue, body pain, face pain. The only thing that went away was my fever, but I developed a sore throat and a dry cough. And even though I wasn't congested in the slightest, I had now completely lost my sense of taste and smell. Day 11. Day 11, things started to look up a little bit. On day 12, public health called me to confirm that I in fact had tested positive for COVID-19, otherwise known as coronavirus. At that point, a Canadian public health nurse was assigned to our case and called me every day to check up on my progress. She also called my husband every day and my stepdaughter to confirm that they weren't feeling any symptoms. Day 12 to 15, this is when I started feeling like I might actually get better. I started eating pasta and a little bit of meat. I could drink lukewarm electrolyte water and ginger ale. And I started being able to get myself down the stairs fully masked into the backyard to get some sunshine, which I think helped. Now on day 14, technically I was allowed to leave quarantine, but I was still exhibiting symptoms. I was still way more tired than I should have been. I still had a cough. Oh, and I still couldn't taste or smell anything. So I kept myself in quarantine for an extra 5 days. The rules about this are still kind of iffy depending on who you ask, but I chose to wait until 48 hours after my last symptom went away to stop self-isolating and to re-enter the world. Also, it needs to be noted that on April 8th, 2020, I started to get my sense of humor back, which felt great. On day 18, I was officially out of quarantine. However, we had done so well keeping my husband and my stepdaughter healthy that I wasn't gonna risk it. I still kept my distance, we didn't hug, and we didn't share a bedroom. Then this week, on April 20th, which would be day... It has now been a full 30 days and I'm feeling good, but I'm still not 100% back to normal. I still get dizzy and I'm still way more tired than I usually am. I lost 10 pounds in 2 weeks, some of which I've managed to gain back. My appetite is still not huge. We'll go for a half-hour dog walk. I'll still feel dizzy sometimes. I'll need to come home and have a nap, or I'll need to sit down if I'm standing for too long. I'm happy to report at the end of all of this that my husband and my stepdaughter Isabel remained healthy the entire time they were quarantined in our house while I was recovering from coronavirus. We managed to do this by being extremely strict about everything. If I had to leave my bedroom, I wore a mask. They did not leave the house for 2 weeks. My aunt dropped us off groceries. My husband started working from home. Isabel didn't see any of her friends or her boyfriend for those 2 weeks. My bedroom door remained closed and I had a separate bathroom. When I was eventually able to eat and my husband brought me food, he came in a very stylish mask. He left my food outside my door. He went downstairs. I went and grabbed my food. I actually hoarded plates for a few days because I was so terrified of giving him my dirty dishes. But eventually he did have to collect my dishes, so I'd put them in a big bucket, I'd leave them outside my door, and he'd pick them up, fully masked, load the dishes and immediately run the dishwasher, leave the bucket outside, and wash his hands twice. As well, when I started coming downstairs, I was fully masked. If I took my mask off and someone else was in the backyard with me, we always stayed 6 feet apart. I know that social distancing is really, really challenging for many, many people for many reasons. And I know that if you don't know someone who's had it, you maybe don't quite grasp how serious it is. I can tell you that I'm 33 years old, incredibly healthy, don't usually get sick, and this took me down so hard, I questioned a few times whether I was gonna make it. I also questioned whether if my husband got it, he would make it. I can tell you that every single day you guys stay at home, you are doing so much to prevent this from spreading to people who are truly vulnerable. It's an all-over body assault. COVID-19 is no joke, and when you have it, it's incredibly scary. I also want to let you know what to watch out for, so I'll give you my full list of symptoms. In no particular order: extreme fatigue, low-grade fever, all-over body ache, dizziness, cold sweats, loss of appetite, shortness of breath, loss of taste and smell, dry cough, or throat. Recovery time? I'm on day 30. Some of the things that helped me get through it were, of course, my husband and my stepdaughter who took care of me, all of my friends and family, and even strangers who texted me to see if I was okay. The ability to get tested, because honestly, getting a positive test result was terrifying, but also reassuring, because I knew exactly what was going on. Finally. 2 podcasts that I listened to while I was in too much pain to sleep, but also in too much pain to open my eyes to watch anything. Crystalia's podcast and Spooked podcast on Luminary. Though I gotta say, the combination of comedy and horror gave me some very odd fever dreams. Also my actor therapy community. In my extreme type A-ness, when I knew that I would... Type A-ness? Because I am a type A, when I knew I was getting off the cruise ship, I immediately signed up for an online masterclass with Actor Therapy in New York, Lindsay Mendez and Ryan Scott Oliver. If you don't know about it, please check it out. And I will also put a link in the description below. And then I got really sick, but their weekly classes forced me to sit up in bed for an hour the first week, sit up in a chair for an hour the second week and sing, sit up in a chair for 2 hours on the third week and sing well, stand up and sing downstairs in my own studio again. And our last class is tonight. They've taken me through my complete recovery and I'm so, so grateful for their support. So that's my story. I hope you found it helpful. I hope that you feel a little more inspired that what you're doing right now is helping so many people. Stay home, wash your hands, stay happy. Look out for some of these symptoms if you feel like you may have been exposed. And just know that you guys who are staying home are rock stars. If you guys have any COVID-19 stories about how you recovered or if you had a family member recovered, please feel free to leave them in the comments below. I'm always interested in hearing other people's experiences. Also, if you're a healthcare worker, thank you so much for everything that you do. You guys put yourselves in harm's way daily and it is so, so appreciated. If you guys are interested in any happy stories about what it's like to be a performer, auditioning, musical theater, singing, drop me a comment. As well, if you're interested in hearing me sing, feel free to subscribe to my channel. Thanks guys, stay home, stay safe.